She was 22 years old, sleeping in the back of a Honda Civic with 211,000 miles on the odometer, and the only legal document in the world that carried her name was a tax lien receipt for $5. That receipt was for a lighthouse, and the lighthouse was where everything she had never been told about herself was waiting behind a wall she had not yet learned to touch. But before we get to the wall, and what was hidden inside it, you need to see her the way the cameras would later see her. Standing in the lantern room of Bass Ledge Light at dusk, 47 feet above the Atlantic, screwing a trail camera into the rusted window frame, with a Phillips head screwdriver she had bought at a dollar store for 89 cents. She was wearing 2 sweatshirts, because the lighthouse had no heat. She was breathing into her hands between turns of the screw. Through the salt-caked glass, the ocean was a flat grey shelf disappearing into November fog, and the only sound was the wind finding its way through cracks in the iron that had been there longer than she had been alive. On the floor beside her left boot sat the receipt, the original tax lien auction receipt from the town of Harpswell, Maine, stamped November 4th, 2024, for the sum of $5. $5 for a 47-foot cast-iron tower with an octagonal lantern room. $5 for a 2-room keeper's cottage with a partially collapsed roof. $5 for 14 acres of rocky shoreline, accessible only by a gravel causeway that flooded at high tide and cut the property off from the mainland for 6 hours out of every 12. That receipt was the only legal document she owned that had her name on it. Nora Callahan, written in the town clerk's hand. Buyer. Below her, 3 more trail cameras were already mounted. One at the cottage door, tucked inside a gap in the clapboard siding. One at the base of the spiral staircase, zip-tied to the cast-iron newel post behind a rag. One facing the gravel causeway, cabled to a fence post, motion-activated. She was not recording wildlife. She had bought the 4 cameras with the last $87 in her checking account. She had been homeless for 4 months. She did not look homeless in the way most people imagine the word. She looked like someone who inventoried her surroundings the way a paramedic inventories an injury. Fast, thorough, and without sentiment. That skill had kept her alive through 7 foster placements in 13 years. It was about to do something bigger. 48 hours from now, every one of those cameras would have captured something. And what they captured would prove that the family Nora Callahan never knew she had did not come looking for her out of love. They came because of what was hidden inside the wall she was leaning against right now. A riveted steel box she had not found yet. Behind a loose brick she had not noticed yet, containing documents that would explain why she spent her childhood in 7 different foster homes instead of in this lighthouse, with the woman who wanted her. In 72 hours, Nora would know whether she had been lost or whether she had been hidden, and she would know who profited from the difference. $5 for a lighthouse, $87 for the cameras. Everything else it would cost her, she did not yet know. But to understand why a 22-year-old woman with no home, no family, and no money would spend her last $87 on surveillance cameras instead of food, you have to go back 3 weeks. To a county auction where no one else raised a hand. The lantern room was silent, except for the wind and the sound of the screwdriver. Something moved in the dark below the staircase. A pair of amber eyes. She did not flinch. She had been watched her entire life. She was just not used to being the one doing the watching. 3 weeks earlier, on October 15, 2024, Nora Callahan was sitting in the parking lot of a Walgreens in Brunswick, Maine, with the engine running for the heat, eating a gas station sandwich that cost $3.79. She was scrolling through the town of Harpswell's online bulletin board on a cracked phone screen, because she checked municipal auction listings the way other people check horoscopes. Not because she could afford anything, because it was a way to imagine a fixed address. She had aged out of the foster system at 18. 4 years of living in her car, in shelters, on couches that belonged to people who stopped answering texts after 2 weeks. She had attended 1 semester of community college before running out of money. She had worked at a gas station, a laundromat, and a seasonal lobster shack. She had $11.42 in her checking account, which she would not know until later because she had stopped checking the balance. Knowing the number made it harder to eat. The listing appeared between a foreclosed storage unit and a vacant half-acre in West Harpswell. Bass Ledge Light. Decommissioned 1991. Tax lien forfeiture. Opening bid, $1. No photograph. Just a parcel number, an acreage of 14.3 acres, and a note that read, "Structure in severe disrepair. Causeway access only. Buyer assumes all liability." She did not know why the name Bass Ledge made her stop chewing. She had no conscious memory of the lighthouse. She had been brought there once, as an infant. For an afternoon she could not remember, but the name sat in her body the way certain smells sit. Below language, above forgetting. She saved the listing. She went back to it, 4 times that night, parked in the same Walgreens lot, reading the same 11 words of description by the glow of a clip-on booklight. Because the Civic's dome light was broken, November 4th, 2024. 10 in the morning. Harpswell Town Hall, a low-ceilinged room that smelled like industrial carpet cleaner. 11 people were there for other parcels. No one was there for the lighthouse. The auctioneer, a man in his 60s with reading glasses on a lanyard, called the parcel number. No hands. He called it again. Nora raised hers, $5. He looked at her the way people look at someone buying a car with no engine. Sold. 2 days later, November 6th, she drove out the gravel causeway at low tide and entered the lighthouse for the first time. The cottage door was warped. She had to shoulder it open. Inside she found water damage, collapsed plaster, a cast-iron stove crusted with rust, and a kitchen table with one leg shorter than the others. On a nail above the stove hung a laminated photograph of a woman in her 50s standing on the catwalk of the lantern room, squinting into the sun, one hand on the railing. Written on the back in blue ballpoint were 2 words and a date. M. Voss, 1987. Nora did not know who M. Voss was, not yet. But the name was also scratched into the doorframe of the cottage. M. Voss. And below it, hash marks, dozens of them. Years of tides counted by a woman who had lived here alone. She traced the scratched letters with her fingertip. She did not know yet that the woman in the photograph had spent the last 4 months of her life writing a letter to her. A letter that was still inside this building, waiting. Nora Callahan did not trust easily, and there was a specific reason. 7 placements in 13 years had taught her one skill that she had never named, but that defined her every waking minute. Every night, in every group home and every foster house, she inventoried her belongings. Toothbrush, phone charger, the 3 photographs she owned, none of which included anyone she was related to. The Ziploc bag with her birth certificate and social security card. If anything had been moved, she knew. If anything was missing, she knew faster. She once caught a group home roommate stealing her bus pass because the pass had been returned to the wrong pocket of her backpack, the outer zip instead of the inner one. She did not accuse the girl. She simply moved the pass and never slept with both eyes closed in that room again. This was how she moved through the world. Not with anger, with inventory. She wanted a family. She wanted it the way a person wants water. Below decision, below pride. And she knew that this want was the thing that would make her stupid if she let it. Every foster kid she had ever known had been undone by the same hunger, the hope that someone was coming back. Nora had decided, sometime around her 15th birthday, that she would not be undone by hope. She would inventory it. She would set it on a table, note its position, and see if anyone moved it when they thought she was not looking. She could not have known how soon she would need that skill. But the lighthouse was about to bring it people who would test every edge of it. November 10th, 2024. 6 days after the auction. Nora was on her hands and knees in the cottage, pulling wet plaster off the floor, when a silver Dodge Ram pulled up the causeway. A man stepped out. Barrel-chested, mid-50s, ruddy face, wearing a canvas jacket with the words, Voss Marine Storage embroidered on the pocket. He was carrying a fruit basket wrapped in cellophane. He said his name was Dale Voss. He said he was her uncle, her mother's brother. He said he had seen the auction record and could not believe it. He said the family had been looking for her. He said he was sorry. Here is what Nora noticed while Dale Voss was talking. His eyes moved past her, twice, to the spiral staircase that led up to the lantern room. He asked, casually, "Have you been upstairs yet?" She said no. His shoulders dropped 1/4 of an inch. Relief. A person who was not looking for it would have missed it entirely. Nora did not miss it. The next day, November 11th, Dale's son arrived. Ryan Voss, 28, driving a newer truck. He brought a space heater and a bag of groceries. He was nervous. He called her cuz, like he was trying on a word that did not fit. He also looked at the staircase. On November 13th, something different happened. A message appeared in Nora's Instagram inbox from a woman named Sophie Pelletier. The message read, "I know this is going to sound insane, but I think we're related, and I think you need to be really, really careful about who else has contacted you." Sophie did not ask about the lighthouse. She asked if Nora was safe. 3 contacts in 4 days. 2 of them looked at the staircase. One of them told her to be careful. The inventory instinct was fully awake now, and it was telling her the same thing it had told her in every group home she had ever slept in. Something has been moved. Someone has entered the room. She could have asked Dale Voss directly why he had appeared at her lighthouse 6 days after the auction, smelling like aftershave and carrying a fruit basket. She could have accepted the hug and the tears and the story about how the family had been searching for her for years. But Nora Callahan had grown up in rooms where people smiled at you in the morning and went through your bag at night. She did not believe in questions. She believed in cameras. November 14th. She drove to the Cabela's in Scarborough. 4 stealth cam trail cameras on clearance, $18.49 each. 1 4-pack of 32GB SD cards, $12.99. Total, $86.95. She paid with her debit card. Remaining balance, $11.42, November 15th. She mounted the cameras. Camera 1 at the cottage front door, inside a gap in the clapboard siding, lens angled down. Camera 2 at the base of the spiral staircase, zip-tied to the cast-iron newel post behind a rag. Camera 3 in the lantern room, screwed into the window frame. Camera 4 on the gravel causeway, cabled to a fence post, motion activated. All 4 were battery-powered. No electricity needed. She also placed a voice-activated digital recorder, one she already owned from her single semester of community college, inside the lens pedestal in the lantern room, under a shop rag. November 16th, Nora told Dale, on the phone, that the town had offered her $12,000 to accept an emergency demolition of the lighthouse, citing structural danger. She said she was thinking about taking the money. The demolition date she invented was December 14th, 2024. She watched his face in her memory while she listened to his voice. His jaw tightened. She could hear it in the way his words went flat. He said, "Don't do anything hasty. Trail cameras are legal on your own property in Maine. Audio recording on your own property is legal under Maine's one-party consent statute. The fake demolition story was a lie, but not a crime. And the cameras were live. The cameras were live. The tide was going out." Dale had told her he would come by that weekend to help with the cleanup. Nora sat in the cottage with the space heater Ryan had brought and a half-feral ginger cat that had been living in the lighthouse when she arrived. She had started calling him Keeper. He was curled on the table beside her, one ear swiveling toward the door every time the wind shifted. She scratched behind his ears and waited. She had spent $87 to find out whether she had a family. In 4 days she would learn that she did, and that they had been stealing from her since she was 6 years old. November 17th, 2024. The test began. Nora left the lighthouse at 9:15 in the morning during low tide, and drove her Civic to the Harpswell Public Library, the only place she could charge her phone for free. She had told Dale she would be in Portland all day looking at apartments. She was 11 minutes away. The tide came in at 11:40. The causeway flooded. For the next 6 hours the lighthouse was an island. Anyone who had driven out before the tide and failed to leave was trapped there until 5:45 in the evening. This was by design. Nora had chosen her absence window to coincide with the tidal cycle. If someone drove out to the lighthouse after she left, but before the causeway flooded, they would be locked on the island for 6 hours, and the cameras would record every minute. Dale took the bait. Camera 4, the causeway camera, captured a silver Dodge Ram crossing the gravel at 10:02 in the morning, 47 minutes after Nora left. The truck parked beside the cottage. Dale Voss stepped out alone. He did not bring a fruit basket this time. He was carrying a pry bar. The trail camera footage was grainy, black and white, with a green tint, time-stamped in the lower right corner in blocky numerals. Each image was triggered by motion, so Dale appeared in a series of stills approximately 3 seconds apart. Walking, stopping, looking over his shoulder, walking again, like a man being documented by a conscience he did not believe in. Camera 1 at the cottage door captured Keeper sitting on the front step, watching Dale approach. At 10:03 and 7 seconds, the cat arched its back and disappeared around the side of the building. Dale did not look at the cat. He looked at the staircase through the open cottage door. Camera 2 captured Dale ascending the spiral staircase at 10:04. He climbed with the pry bar in his right hand, gripping the railing with his left. He was not exploring. He knew where he was going. He had been here before. Camera 3 captured him entering the lantern room at 10:06. He went directly to the east-facing wall. He set the pry bar against the brickwork. Second row above the lens pedestal, left side. He pried at a brick. It did not come free. He tried the next one, then the next. He worked his way across the row for 11 minutes, captured in 37 motion-triggered frames. He did not look at the lens, the windows, or the floor. He did not take photographs. He pried at mortar. At 10:17 he stopped. He pulled out his phone and made a call. The audio recorder captured it. Dale's voice, recorded on the device Nora had placed under a shop rag in the lens pedestal. "It's not in the east wall. She might have moved it." A pause. "No, the kid hasn't been up here. She told me she hasn't gone upstairs." Another pause. "I don't know. Maybe Margaret moved it before she..." He trailed off. "Look, just get Ryan out here before the next low tide. We'll try the other walls." Dale Voss was not here to reconnect with his niece. He was here for a specific object hidden inside the lantern room wall, and someone was on the other end of that call who already knew what it was. Nora would not hear the cassette tape for another 4 days. But when she did, one line would land like a hand on her shoulder. A line from a woman she had never met, recorded months before her death. "If Dale comes to this lighthouse after I am gone, he is not coming for the view. Watch his hands. He has been watching mine for years." That evening, November 17th, Nora crossed the causeway at low tide and retrieved the SD cards. She sat in her car in the library parking lot with the dome light that did not work, using the clip-on book light, and scrolled through the footage on her phone. She saw Dale with the pry bar. She listened to the audio. Her hands were shaking. Not from cold, though it was 31 degrees outside. From recognition. The inventory instinct was screaming. Something has been moved. Something is missing. The room she was standing in was larger than she had thought. And then she noticed something in the footage that almost anyone else would have missed. In the lantern room frames, at 10:09 and 14 seconds, there was a shadow on the floor that did not belong to Dale. It came from the lens pedestal. A slight irregularity in the base. She zoomed in on her phone screen. The pedestal had a seam, a rectangular line where no rectangular line should be. A hatch. Dale had walked right past it because he was looking at the wall, not the floor. She did not call the police. She had no evidence of a crime yet. A man had entered a relative's unlocked property and poked at some bricks. She did not confront Dale. She did not tell Sophie. She decided to wait for the next low tide, retrieve the cameras again, and go into the lantern room herself to examine the pedestal. She had asked the lighthouse what her family was made of. The lighthouse was answering, but it was not finished yet. The pedestal was, when Nora returned to the cottage that night. Keeper was sitting on the table facing the staircase, as if he had been guarding it. She fed him a can of tuna from the groceries Ryan brought. She slept on the cottage floor in a sleeping bag. At 2:14 in the morning she woke because the cat had moved from the table to the window. He was staring at the causeway. The tide was in, no one could cross. But something, a flashlight or a phone screen, was visible on the far shore, pointed at the lighthouse. Then it went out. She did not sleep again that night. November 18th, 2024. Low tide at 6:20 in the morning. Nora crossed the causeway in the dark. She climbed the spiral staircase to the lantern room, with a flashlight and a flathead screwdriver. Keeper followed her, his paws silent on the iron treads. She knelt at the lens pedestal. The scene she had seen in the photograph was real. A rectangular panel, 8 inches by 12, held in place by 4 brass screws that had been painted over. She worked each screw free. The panel came away. Inside was a watertight tin olive drab, the kind used to store ammunition. It was heavy. She lifted it out. Inside the tin she found a handwritten letter. 7 pages, blue ballpoint on yellow legal paper, dated September 14th, 2019. And 4 cassette tapes in clear cases, labeled in the same handwriting. Tape 1, Tape 2, Tape 3, Tape 4, no cassette player. She read the letter by flashlight, sitting on the lantern room floor at 6:47 in the morning, while the horizon turned from black to the color of a bruise. The first line read, "If you are reading this, then my guess was right, and the tide brought you home before anyone else could stop it." The letter was from a woman named Margaret Agnes Voss, Nora's maternal grandmother, a woman she had never met. Margaret's letter explained, in firm and careful handwriting, that Nora's mother, Diane Voss Callahan, had left the lighthouse at 17 and refused all contact. Margaret had learned of Nora's birth through a cousin and tried to file for custody. A lawyer told her that grandparent custody in Maine was an uphill battle she would probably lose. She did not fight hard enough. She said so, in her own words, in the letter. "I should have fought harder. I should have hired a lawyer and broken down doors. I did not, and I will carry that failure into whatever comes next." The letter explained the trust. The lighthouse sat on a 14.3-acre parcel. In 1988, Margaret had leased the subsurface mineral rights to Downeast Gravel Corp for gravel extraction on the inland side of the parcel. The lease generated $2,200 per month. In 2002, when Nora was 4 years old, Margaret opened a trust at Casco Bay Savings, with Nora as the sole beneficiary. Every lease check went into it. Margaret's voice, through the ink on the page, said it plainly. "I put every lease check into an account with your name on it. $2,200 a month. It is not much, but it is yours, and no one, not Dale, not the bank, not God himself, has the right to touch it." The letter warned about Dale. It did not accuse him of anything specific, because as of September 2019, the fraud had not yet happened. Margaret was still alive and managing the trust. But she knew her son-in-law's brother. She had watched him for years, and then the letter told Nora where to look. Behind the 3rd brick from the left, 2nd row above the lens pedestal, there is a box I riveted shut myself. Everything that proves who you are and what is yours is inside it. Do not let them tear this place down before you find it. Nora sat on the cold iron floor of the lantern room, with the letter in her hands and the flashlight making a small circle of light on the ceiling. She now knew what Dale had been prying at. She now knew why the lighthouse had been sold for $5. Because back taxes had accumulated after Margaret's death, with no heir to pay them, because Nora had never been told she was an heir. And she now knew why Dale's shoulders had dropped when she said she had not been upstairs. She did not open the strongbox yet. She knew Dale was looking for it. If she opened it now, he might see the disturbed brickwork on his next visit. She replaced the pedestal panel, pocketed the letter and the 4 cassette tapes, and decided to find a cassette player before she did anything else. The cat was sitting on the lens pedestal when she replaced the panel, as if overseeing the work. She scratched behind his ears. "You knew, didn't you?" she said. It was the first time she had spoken aloud inside the lighthouse. November 20th, 2024. Nora found a cassette player at a Goodwill in Bath for $2.50. She sat in her car in the parking lot, plugged in earbuds, and pressed play. Margaret's voice was low and unhurried, slightly hoarse, the cadence of a woman who had spent decades talking to the sea because there was no one else to talk to. There was no self-pity in it. There was a stubbornness that sounded like love. On the first tape, Margaret said, "They told me a woman alone had no business tending a light. I told them the light did not care who wound the clockwork, only that someone did." She said, "Your mother left this house when she was 17 and never forgave me for loving the sea more than I loved arguing with her. I do not know if she was right. I know I never stopped setting a plate for her." Nora skipped ahead. She could not wait. On the third tape, Margaret's voice went quieter. "I held you once. Your mother brought you, I think, to punish me for something, and then she took you away again before the tide turned. You smelled like milk and salt air, and I have never forgotten it." Nora sat in the Goodwill parking lot for 45 minutes. She did not cry. She pressed rewind and played that fragment 3 times. Then she played the second tape, the one about the trust and the $2,200 monthly checks, and the calculation she did in her head changed everything. $2,200 a month, 12 months a year, 14 years, from 2002 when the trust was opened to 2016 when Nora turned 18. $369,600. Even accounting for whatever Margaret may have drawn for Nora's care costs, the balance at Nora's 18th birthday should have been at least $340,000. Nora had aged out of the foster system with $212 on a state-issued debit account. When she checked the cameras that evening, the audio recorder in the lantern room had captured something new. Ryan Voss had come to the lighthouse at 1:15 in the afternoon. Camera 2 confirmed it, and he had made a phone call from the lantern room, apparently not realizing or caring that his voice would carry in the iron-walled space. Ryan's voice recorded, "Dad, she's talking about taking the demolition money if they tear this place down and find the box." A pause. "Yeah, I know." Another pause. "What about the lease? If the property goes back to the town, the lease transfers to whoever buys it." A long silence. "I know what Grandma's will says. I know." Then, quieter. "Well, maybe we should just tell her. She doesn't even know about the trust." A breath. "Okay, fine, but I don't feel good about this." The trust money was missing. The family knew about the strongbox and the lease. Ryan was conflicted, and the word will hung in the air. Margaret's will was apparently in the strongbox, and Dale knew what it said. The lease was still active, still generating $2,200 a month. And Nora did not yet know where that money was going. She decided to push the ruse further. She called Dale and told him she had made up her mind. She was going to accept the demolition buyout. She gave him the fake date again. December 14th. She heard him breathing. He said, "Let me come out there Saturday. There might be another option." She agreed. She reset the cameras. November 23rd, 2024. Saturday. Dale arrived at the lighthouse at 9:30 in the morning, low tide, with a manila folder. He sat Nora down at the kitchen table in the cottage, the one with the short leg, and presented her with what he called an opportunity. A quitclaim deed, pre-filled, transferring ownership of the lighthouse and all 14.3 acres from Nora Callahan to Dale Voss for the sum of $15,000. Notarized. Dale explained that he would buy it from her outright. $15,000, that was $3,000 more than the town was offering. She could use the money to get an apartment, get back on her feet. Nora looked at the document the way she looked at everything. She inventoried it. The notary seal was from Cumberland County. But Dale lived and worked in Sagadahoc County, and the document was dated November 18th, 5 days earlier. The nearest Cumberland County notary to Dale's home was 40 minutes away. Why would he drive 40 minutes for a notary? Unless he did not want the local notary, the one who knew him, to see what he was doing. She also noticed a phrase in the deed that she was not supposed to understand. "And all subsurface mineral rights." 4 words. Dale thought they meant nothing to a 22-year-old sleeping in a car. But she had listened to Margaret's tapes. She did not sign. She said she needed a couple of days to think about it. Dale's face did something complicated. a reorganization of muscles that started as patience and ended as something colder. He said, "Don't wait too long. The town won't hold the demolition offer forever." Camera footage after Dale left. He did not leave. Camera 2 captured him ascending the staircase, one more time at 10:45, while Nora was deliberately outside, visible on camera 4, walking the causeway as if checking the tide. He was in the lantern room for 9 minutes. Camera 3 showed him prying at the third brick from the left. This time it moved, but he could not get it free without a heavier tool. He replaced it, came downstairs, and drove away at 11:10. That evening, Sophie Pelletier called Nora. Sophie's voice was tense, hushed. She said she had tried to find Nora in 2020. She had called social services in Augusta and told them Margaret had left a trust. They said someone had already contacted them about Nora, someone in the family, and that her case was closed. Sophie had not known who. Now she knew it was Dale. Sophie explained that she was Margaret's grandniece, not a direct heir. She had no claim on the trust or the lighthouse. She had contacted Nora because she found Margaret's death suspicious in its timing. Margaret had died 2 months after writing the letter. Dale had filed as trustee within 6 weeks of the death. Nora listened to tape 4 that night in the cottage. Margaret's voice said, "Keep the light, Nora. Not because it is worth anything on paper, but because it is the only place in the world that was built to warn people away from the rocks. You will understand why that matters." The third brick from the left, second row above the pedestal. Margaret had told her exactly where. Dale had almost reached it with a pry bar. Nora would reach it first with her bare hands. What was inside would be worth more than $340,000. It would be worth her entire life. November 24th, 2024. Low tide at 5:55 in the morning. Nora crossed the causeway in the dark for the second time. She had a flashlight, a flathead screwdriver, and a canvas bag. Keeper was on the staircase landing when she entered. He followed her up. She knelt at the east wall. Third brick from the left, second row above the lens pedestal. She worked the screwdriver into the mortar. The brick was loose. Dale's prying had loosened it further. It came free in her hands. Behind it was a cavity about 14 inches deep, lined with plastic sheeting. Inside the plastic was a riveted steel box, dark with age and moisture, approximately 10 by 14 inches. Heavy. She lifted it out. The box had no lock. Margaret had riveted it shut with 4 steel rivets. Nora used the screwdriver to pry the rivets free. The lid popped open with a sound like a held breath released. Inside was the original trust charter, dated March 12, 2002, from Casco Bay Savings and Trust. Beneficiary, Nora Diane Callahan. Trustee, Margaret Agnes Voss. Successor trustee to be designated by the beneficiary upon attaining the age of 18. Not Dale. Beneath it was Margaret's last will and testament, notarized September the 20th, 2019. 6 days after the letter. Sole heir, Nora Diane Callahan. Specifically devised were the lighthouse, the cottage, the 14.3-acre parcel, all subsurface mineral rights, and the contents of the Casco Bay Savings Trust account. No mention of Dale, no mention of Diane. Under the will were 22 years of monthly lease payment receipts from Down East Gravel Corp., organized in rubber-banded bundles by year. Each receipt showed $2,200 deposited into the trust. And there was a copy of Dale Voss's petition to Sagadahoc County Probate Court, dated January 8, 2020, requesting appointment as trustee of the Margaret Voss Trust on behalf of the minor beneficiary. It was granted. But Nora was not a minor. She was 21 at the time. The petition listed her age as 17. Her date of birth had been changed. At the bottom of the box was a sealed envelope. Inside was a single photograph. Margaret Voss, mid-60s in the image, standing on the lighthouse catwalk, holding a baby in a yellow blanket. On the back, in the same blue ballpoint, Nora and me, July 1998. The only time. Nora held the photograph for a long time. She turned it over and read the words twice. She put it inside her jacket, against her chest, and zipped the jacket over it. Then she put everything else back in the box, put the box in the canvas bag, and descended the staircase. As she reached the bottom, Keeper was sitting at the cottage door looking out at the causeway. The tide was still low, but there were headlights on the far shore, someone parked, facing the lighthouse, engine running. At 6:30 in the morning, the headlights went dark. The engine stayed running. Nora Callahan put the canvas bag in her car and did not go back inside. There are 4 cameras still recording inside that lighthouse. There are documents in a canvas bag in the back seat of a car with 211,000 miles on it. And there is a young woman who has just learned that she was not lost. She was hidden. If you have been here this long, you are already the kind of person who does not look away when it matters. And a subscription helps me keep telling these stories like this. 1. The test had exposed something Nora did not bargain for. She had expected to catch Dale being nosy. She had expected garden variety family selfishness, the kind she had lived with her whole life. What the cameras and the strongbox had revealed was a financial crime spanning 4 years, and a conspiracy that had put her in foster care. Sophie connected Nora with a legal aid attorney named Cassandra Mills, in Portland. On November 25th, Nora and Sophie sat in Mills's office with the strongbox contents spread across a conference table. Mills examined the documents and explained what they proved. First, the probate fraud. Dale's January 2020 petition to Sagadahoc County Probate Court listed Nora's date of birth as June 15, 2005. Her actual date of birth was June 15, 2002. She was 17 when Margaret died and 21 when Dale petitioned. By listing her as a minor, Dale had justified his appointment as trustee on behalf of a child who could not represent herself. The court granted it because no one challenged it. Second, the trust diversion. Bank records which Mills could subpoena would likely show that Dale, as appointed trustee, had redirected trust disbursements to himself. At $2,200 a month from January 2020 through November 2024, that was approximately $129,800. Combined with whatever balance existed when he took control, the total theft could exceed $200,000. Third, the social services interference. Sophie's testimony that she had called social services in 2020 and been told someone in the family had already made contact about Nora suggested that Dale or an associate had proactively blocked outside inquiries. This could constitute obstruction if it involved false statements to a state agency. Fourth, the quitclaim deed. It was designed to transfer the mineral rights before Nora could discover their existence. If Nora had signed, Dale would own the land and the income stream, and the trust, now empty, would be moot. Mills told Nora what she could not do yet. She could not file criminal charges directly. She needed the bank records, which required a court order. She needed the probate file, which was public but took time to obtain. And she needed to prove that the false birth date was intentional, not a clerical error. Mills told Nora what she could do. File an emergency petition to remove Dale as trustee and freeze the trust account. File a report with the Sagadahoc County District Attorney's Office for investigation of fraud and forgery. And, critically, not confront Dale. If he knew the documents were out of the wall, he might destroy his own records. But there was a problem. Dale was going back to the lighthouse. He would find the cavity empty. The clock was now running. November 26th, 8:47 in the evening. Camera 4 captured headlights on the causeway. The tide was out. A truck crossed. Not Dale's silver Ram, but a dark Ford F-150 that Nora did not recognize. Camera 1 showed a figure she had never seen approaching the cottage door, trying the handle which was locked. Nora had installed a padlock on November 16th for $4.29. The figure walked around the building. Camera 2 showed the figure entering through a ground floor window Nora had not secured. Camera 3 captured nothing. The figure did not go upstairs. Camera 1 captured the figure exiting the window at 9:12 in the evening, carrying nothing. The truck left at 9:20. Nora reviewed the footage on November 27th. The unknown person had not gone to the lantern room. They had searched the cottage. She did not know what they were looking for. November 28th, Ryan called Nora. His voice was different, tight. He said his father knew the box was gone. He did not know how. He thought Dale had gone out and checked. Dale was talking about calling a lawyer. Dale was angry, Ryan said. Nora, I didn't know about the trust thing until last year. I swear I thought he was just managing some account for Grandma. Nora told Ryan nothing about the documents. She said only, I don't know what box you're talking about. Ryan said, Okay. Just be careful. November 29th, 7:15 in the morning. Camera 4 captured Dale's silver Ram crossing the causeway. He was not alone. A second man was in the passenger seat. Camera 1 showed them approaching the cottage. Dale had a crowbar, bigger than the pry bar. The second man had a duffel bag. They went directly to the padlocked door. The second man took out bolt cutters. Camera 2, 7:22. They ascended the staircase. Camera 3, 7:24. Dale went to the east wall, third brick from the left. He pulled it free. He reached into the cavity. His hand came out empty. The audio recorder captured what happened next. Dale's voice, It's gone. She took it. She, the words dissolved into something unintelligible, and then came back hard. She knows. The second man, Then we do this the other way. File the motion Monday. Get her off the property. She's got no money, no lawyer. Who's going to fight you? Dale, what if she already went to a bank? What if she's got the trust records? The second man, Then you move the money tonight. The timestamp was November 29th, 7:26 in the morning. Dale had approximately 48 hours before the legal aid office opened Monday morning. If he moved the remaining trust funds over the weekend, there might be nothing left to freeze. Nora was sitting in her car at the Harpswell Library, watching the causeway through binoculars she had bought at Goodwill for $6. She could see Dale's truck still parked at the Lighthouse. The canvas bag with the strongbox contents was on the seat beside her. She had an appointment with Cassandra Mills on Monday at 9 in the morning. Dale was going to move the money tonight. She had 48 hours. He had the bank passwords. She had the proof. He had the head start. Saturday, November 29th, 11 in the morning. Nora called Cassandra Mills's emergency line. Mills could not file a court order on a weekend. But she could do one thing. She faxed a preservation of assets letter to Casco Bay Savings and Trust, citing the trust charter that named Nora as beneficiary and requesting a voluntary hold on all disbursements pending investigation. Banks were not required to comply. But a faxed letter from an attorney created a paper trail that made the bank liable if they allowed a withdrawal they had been warned about. Mills sent the fax at 12:15 in the afternoon. Nora called Sophie. She asked Sophie to do one thing: go to the Sagadahoc County Probate Court, which had Saturday public access hours until 1 in the afternoon, and obtain a certified copy of Dale's 2020 trustee petition. The one with the forged birth date. Sophie picked it up at 12:40 and photographed it. Nora called the Sagadahoc County Sheriff's non-emergency line and reported that someone had entered her property, broken a padlock, and been recorded on her security cameras. She filed a criminal trespass complaint. She did not mention the fraud yet, just the trespass. She wanted a paper trail and a case number, and then Nora set the final trap. At 3 in the afternoon, she texted Dale, "Hey, I've been thinking about your offer. The 15,000. Can we meet at the Lighthouse tomorrow morning, low tide? I want to sign the papers." If Dale showed up tomorrow with the quitclaim deed, she would have him on camera presenting a fraudulent document to the person he had defrauded, 24 hours after being recorded discussing the plan to move the stolen funds. And she would not be alone. Cassandra Mills would be there, Sophie would be there, and the county sheriff, who had already been informed of the trespass, would be parked on the far side of the causeway. She thought of Margaret's voice on the first tape. "They told me a woman alone had no business tending a light. I told them the light did not care who wound the clockwork, only that someone did." Nora Callahan was winding the clockwork. November 30th. Low tide at 8:05 in the morning. 4 cameras recording. A canvas bag on the kitchen table. A ginger cat on the windowsill. And a 22-year-old woman who had been invisible her entire life, about to become the most visible person in Dale Voss's world. The sky was the color of old pewter. The sea was flat, sullen. The kind of calm that feels like held breath. The gravel causeway was exposed. Nora was standing inside the cottage. The canvas bag was on the kitchen table. Open, the strongbox documents fanned out. The trail cameras were recording. The voice-activated recorder was in its place in the lantern room, and a second one, borrowed from Mills's office, sat on the kitchen shelf behind a coffee can. Sophie was in her car, at the head of the causeway, out of sight of incoming traffic. Cassandra Mills was inside the cottage, standing by the window, wearing a grey wool coat and an expression that said she had done this before, but it never stopped making her tired. Deputy Paul Renard of the Sagadahoc County Sheriff's Office was parked in an unmarked vehicle on the mainland side of the causeway, with the trespass complaint and the camera footage Nora had provided on a USB drive. Keeper was on the table, sitting on the trust charter like a paperweight. Nora moved him. He moved back. 8:05. Low tide. The causeway was fully exposed. 8:11. Dale's silver Ram appeared. He was alone. He crossed the causeway slowly. He parked. He got out holding the manila folder. The same folder from November 23rd. The quitclaim deed inside. He entered the cottage. He saw the canvas bag. He saw the documents spread across the table. He saw Cassandra Mills. His hand tightened on the manila folder. The knuckles went white. He took one step backward toward the door. Mills spoke first. "Mr. Voss, my name is Cassandra Mills. I represent Nora Callahan. Please have a seat." Dale did not sit. He said, "I don't know who you are, but this is a family matter." Nora spoke. Her voice was even. She had rehearsed this. "You filed a petition in January 2020, listing my birthday as June 15th, 2005. I was born in 2002. You knew that. You changed it so you could call yourself my trustee." She laid the certified copy of the petition on the table. Next to it, she placed the trust charter. Next to that, Margaret's will. "You took money from an account that was opened for me by a woman I never got to meet. You made sure I never met her. And now you came here to buy this lighthouse from me for $15,000, so I would never find out that the land under it generates $26,000 a year." Dale's mouth opened. Nothing came out for 4 seconds. Then, Margaret was confused at the end. "That will isn't valid." She didn't know what she was signing. Mills responded without raising her voice. "The will is notarized and witnessed by 2 signatories in accordance with main title 18C. It was executed on September the 20th, 2019, 2 months before Mrs. Voss's death. The probate court may hear a competency challenge, but you will need to make that argument to a judge who will also be reviewing a fraudulent petition bearing a falsified date of birth. I would not recommend it." Nora took out her phone and played the audio from November 29th. Dale's voice in the lantern room. "It's gone." She took it. And the second man's voice. "Then you move the money tonight." She played it once. The cottage was silent except for the audio and the sound of the tide beginning to creep back over the gravel. Dale said nothing. He turned and walked out the door. He crossed the causeway. Deputy Renard met him on the other side. After Dale was gone and the cottage was quiet, Nora sat at the kitchen table. Mills was making phone calls in the other room. Sophie was standing at the doorway, watching the tide come in, giving Nora space. Nora took out Margaret's letter, the 7 pages of yellow legal paper she had read 4 times now. She turned to the last page, the closing line. She had not read it aloud to anyone. "You were never unwanted. You were hidden. And I am sorry it has taken you this long to find the proof." The handwriting wavers on the last word. Not because Margaret's hand was unsteady. The rest of the letter is firm and clear. Because she was pressing harder. Because she wanted the word proof to survive the damp, the years, the tin box, the wall. It survived. Nora folded the letter along its original creases and put it back in the tin. She took out the photograph. Margaret, on the catwalk, holding a baby in a yellow blanket. The sea behind them, the light behind them. She looked at it for a long time. She held it with both hands. She set it on the table, face up, and placed the trust charter beside it. She looked at both, the photograph and the document, as if she was reading the same sentence in two different languages. "Keep the light," Margaret had said, "not because it is worth anything on paper." Dale Voss was arrested on December 3, 2024, on charges of forgery, fraud, and theft by unauthorized taking under Maine Title 17A, Section 353. The Sagadahoc County District Attorney's investigation, aided by the trust records, bank subpoenas, and the camera and audio evidence, revealed that Dale had diverted a total of $218,400 from the Margaret Voss Trust between January 2024. The amount was higher than the original estimate because Dale had also redirected lease payments that came in after he was appointed trustee. He was held on $50,000 bail. He did not make bail for 11 days. Ryan Voss cooperated with the investigation. He provided a sworn statement confirming that he was aware of his father's actions beginning in 2023 and that he had participated in the Lighthouse search under his father's direction. He was charged with criminal trespass, a Class E misdemeanor, and received a deferred disposition contingent on community service. He wrote a letter to Nora. It was 3 pages. One line stood out. "I knew it was wrong and I didn't stop it. I'm not going to ask you to forgive me, because I haven't earned it yet." Sophie Pelletier was vindicated. Her 2020 attempt to contact Nora through social services was entered into the court record. She and Nora began a real relationship, not as cousins performing a reunion, as two people who had reason to trust each other because one of them had tried to do the right thing when it was hard. The unknown man from the November 26th break-in and the November 29th Lantern Room conversation was identified as Gerald Thibodeau, a boat storage client of Dale's, with a prior fraud conviction. He was charged as an accessory. The district attorney's case against Dale was strengthened by Thibodeau's involvement. A court order issued December 18, 2024, removed Dale as trustee and appointed Nora as sole trustee of her own account. Casco Bay Savings reported a remaining balance of $74,212. Dale had spent the rest. The mineral rights lease was confirmed as active, and future payments of $2,200 a month would go directly to Nora. She did not sell the lighthouse. She did not demolish it. She used $22,000 from the trust to make the cottage weathertight, a new roof, insulation, a wood stove to replace the rusted one, a functioning door. The lantern room she left exactly as it was, except for the empty cavity in the wall, which she filled with new mortar and a single brick she inscribed herself. MV, 1974 to 2019. In February 2025, Nora applied for a 5013 designation for an organization she called Keepers Light, a transitional housing program for aged-out foster youth in the Harpswell area. The Lighthouse Cottage was the first unit. She planned to build 2 more small cabins on the 14 acres, using grant funding and the lease income. The program's intake form asked one question that was not on any standard form. Is there anyone who should have come for you? Not to assign blame. To begin the inventory, Sophie moved to Harpswell. She became the program's volunteer coordinator. She and Nora ate dinner together in the cottage on Thursdays. They were not best friends in the way fiction usually means. They were family in the way the word actually works. 2 people who keep showing up. Nora was not rich. $74,000 and $2,200 a month was stability, not wealth. She worked part-time at a marine supply store in Brunswick. She enrolled in online classes at Southern Maine Community College. She slept in the cottage on a real bed, the first real bed she had slept in that belonged to her. Some nights she still woke up and inventoried the room. But now the inventory was different. It was not what is missing. It was what is here. A spring evening, 2025. April. The air smelled like tidal mud and the first green things. Nora was in the lantern room. She was unscrewing the trail camera from the window frame, the same one she had mounted in November, the one that had recorded the beginning of everything. The cameras were coming down. She did not need them anymore. She set the camera on the lens pedestal. She looked out the salt-caked window at the causeway. The tide was going out. The gravel was emerging from the water in a long wet line, the way a path appears when you learn it was there all along. Keeper was on the pedestal, beside the camera, washing his face. He had gotten fatter since November. He ignored her completely. She did not take this personally. She reached into her jacket pocket and took out the tax lien receipt. The same one from November. $5. Stamped November 4th, 2024. It was creased and soft from being carried every day for 5 months. She pinned it to the lantern room wall with a thumbtack, next to the brick she had inscribed with Margaret's initials. $5. That was what she paid for the only place in the world that had been waiting for her. Some people would say she got it for nothing. She would say she got it for everything it cost her not to stop looking. Margaret had written it months before Nora could read it. The tide brought you home. Nora stood in the lantern room, the Atlantic through the glass. The receipt on the wall, the cat on the pedestal, the camera in her hand, no longer recording. The light was the deep, low gold of a Maine spring evening, and the causeway was opening like a sentence that finishes itself. She turned off the flashlight. She did not need it any more. The lantern room had its own light.